Watch this.
The rundown to the runoff is down to within a week. The race for the next mayor of Eagle will be decided in 6 days. We heard from the incumbent yesterday. Today, it's the challenger's turn. Brad Pike shares his thoughts on law enforcement and growth.
Don't you want to go on the record about these bills? And my response back to them was, I will let the voters be my judge.
Another state lawmaker is refusing to play along with another Republican Central Committee, calling them not Republican enough. The latest skirmish highlighting the infighting in the Idaho Republican Party.
From our standpoint as an industry, we're trying to target those wolves that are depredating on cattle.
Not a shock, shooting wolves from the sky might stir up some dust. Today, we hear what the Idaho Cattle Association had to say about it, and it also might not shock you. Election Day Part 2 is next Tuesday. Voters in Eagle are going to select a mayor in a special runoff election. Incumbent Mayor Jason Pierce and City Council President Brad Pike, they are the finalists after no one in the field got more than 50% on election night. So we heard from Mayor Pierce yesterday on the 208. In Part 2 of our Eagle election overtime coverage, Joe Paris sat down today with the challenger. Pike is the Eagle City Council president and a former city council member, vice mayor, and mayor for the city of Hollister, California. And about 10 years ago, Pike moved to Eagle after retiring from a career in firefighting in Santa Clara County. Joe Paris picks up the conversation with Mr. Pike on the question, why do you want to be mayor?
Well, one, it's a calling for me. This whole getting into local government to begin with is calling. And I think there's some needs that need to be met on a larger level. And my drive is public safety and economic development. And so I feel that those two need to be addressed and need to be the cornerstone of our future.
If elected, what changes would you look to make, or what policies would you look to implement specifically for law enforcement or public safety?
Well, law enforcement, that's obviously my world. So we're deficient here in this city, and I've been kind of advocating for this for the last 4 years during budget hearings and whatnot, that we have to get behind, we're behind the 8 ball. We need to get in front of this, and we need to be proactive and have our law enforcement be a deterrent for the bad guys not wanting to come into Eagle. I would just like to see a little bit more funding coming up on the law enforcement side, which will mean we have to look at future capital projects and things like that, and how do we get in some of this other revenue that we get. It's just a reallocation of where your priorities are. My priorities is, as a mayor, is the general welfare of a community. That's his main or her main responsibility. So that means safety and economics, and you don't want to have a community that falls short and gets into any kind of issues when the future budgeting is looked at. So one of my paramount things was to make sure that we allocate new funding mechanisms to bring on staff, the police staff, because we are deficient. We were at 25, and now we're bringing on 2 more. One's coming from the county and one's in training still. But we need to that puts us at 27 for 37,109 people. The sky's not falling. We're not going to become Chicago or any other big city, but we need to be proactively approaching our future and have a strategic plan in place, and I do have one.
Let's talk a little bit about growth. I know that one thing the people of Eagle were really passionate about over the last few years is the annexation of Avamore. Where did you stand on that? Where do you stand on that today?
Well, when you're the lone wolf that doesn't support a project, it kind of has a weird feel to it. And it was a hard decision for me. I know Avamore's there. They've already been there, and they're going to grow. We just weren't ready for them, in my opinion. We almost have 40 projects on the floor here that we have to allow to come to fruition and finish out building them. And that's going to put us up, in the mid 40,000 just on its own. They're part of the family now. If you look at it from a family's perspective, I use this analogy, they were the unexpected birth that came into the family. You love them, you nurture them, you feed them, you take care of them. They're part of the family now. If
elected mayor, what do you think the city looks like 4 years from now?
Probably harmonious is the best word I can think of. Right now, there's a divisiveness in the community that we're not going to pretend that there's not. I want to bring back communication. I want to bring back the harmonious feel. I want people to be proud of living in Eagle. We're the representatives for those people. We're supposed to be listening and representing the people. You have to put the needs of the people first. And if you get away from that, then you shouldn't even be in that position to begin with.
This Sunday morning on Viewpoint at 9 o'clock right here on 7, we will have the in-depth interview from Brad Pike, who you just heard from, as well as Mayor Pierce. And thank you to both of them for their time this week during the busy week. And Brian, of course, Election Day is Tuesday, and there is also a mayoral runoff going on in Mountain Home. Our Hector Mendoza did a great profile with the candidates, so you can go to ktvb.com to find more about the Eagle runoff as well as the Mountain Home.
As you kind of pointed out while we were watching this story, I mean, the fact that the incumbent mayor didn't get a majority of the votes going out, there seems to be kind of a referendum there. Like maybe this could be closer than they think.
Yeah, it's very interesting because the way it broke out basically on election night was a third for Stan Ridgway, about a third for Mr. Pike, and about a third for Mayor Pierce. So you have 2/3 there basically that did not vote for the incumbent. So it'll be interesting to see how this shakes out and the amount of campaigning they've done really over the last month, what type of impact that'll have next Tuesday, December 5th.
We'll find out, and we'll have that full coverage for you here at KTVB. Thanks, Joe. All right, well, speaking of voting, registered Republicans have another presidential candidate to choose from coming up at the caucus in March. Today, Vivek Ramaswamy ponied up his $50,000 and officially filed for the Idaho presidential caucus. He's considered an American entrepreneur and an author, and he's born in Cincinnati, Ohio. Also this week, his national political director is leaving his campaign to join former President Donald Trump's campaign. So I guess the question is, what are the chances they'll have a reunion here in the Gem State next year? Probably not.
So to say now we should be beholden to them when they were complete obstructionists when we were trying to run for office is a little bit ridiculous, if you ask me.
Another Republican lawmaker speaking out after being called on the carpet for her voting record last legislative session. We touched on this earlier this month when we did our infighting GOP kind of stories that elected Republicans are pushing back on the Central Committee, censuring them or giving them a vote of no confidence. Eastern Idaho Representative Stephanie Mickelson is pushing back now and being beholden to the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, as you just heard, when, as she told us today, they offered nothing but an opponent to her during the last primary season. Representative Mickelson, along with Representative Wendy Horman and Senator Kevin Cook, all from District 32, they were supposed to explain their votes this week on several bills at the State House last winter. This is based on the new party rule passed by the state Republican Party last summer, where central committees are allowed, or in fact encouraged, to reprimand lawmakers for not following the party platform closely enough. All three of them refused to participate, refused to be a subject to a party platform tribunal, as they called it, in front of a special investigation committee. So the Bonneville County Central Committee canceled the closed-door meeting they planned for Monday just right before we're supposed to start. Legislative District 32 Chair Doyle Beck sent out an email to all three lawmakers saying since all three have chosen not to participate, the hearing is going to be moved to next Tuesday. Not that changing the date will change the opinion of those at the center of these hearings. Representative Mickelson told us even the so-called charges against her were questionable.
They had 16 charges that they leveled at me, and they had on the bottoms of every one of them, they had the Idaho Freedom Foundation score on it.
This bill is a direct assault to those librarians.
Even sent me a thing saying that they were adding to my file, and it was a Stop Idaho Rhinos Twitter account that they were quoting in my charges against me.
That seems like there's a lot of kind of intermingling going on here.
A lot of intermingling, and what most people don't realize, especially with my central committee and my legislative district, Doyle Beck and Brian Smith serve on the Idaho Freedom Foundation, and they failed to disclose that in their quote unquote charges that I'm being charged with, that they sit on that board and therefore decide what they're going to score those bills. And then they're going to use the Idaho Freedom Foundation to judge me. I don't think so.
What do you think about this whole process?
I personally think that there's a lot of hubris there on their part to think that they know more than the voters, that their opinion counts more than our other voters, and it doesn't.
You obviously aren't the first to have this happen to you. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. It's happening all over the state with central committees. Where do you see this going then? I mean, is this the way that this is going to kind of go in the future with committees continuing to do this, or how's that going to happen?
Well, I think you have one of two options. It's either going to make it so people pay attention and start running for PCOs within communities, or the party itself will make itself irrelevant. When you have a party that's going to come and cleanse, half of the Republicans, well, guess what? Those Republicans are either going to go to be independents or they're going to go to be Democrats. And when you say, that you're not Republican enough, that's not increasing your base, that's diminishing your base. And that's what they'll have happen. I mean, why should any of us go spend our winters in Boise if they're going to ultimately just tell us exactly how we have to vote? And if we don't vote exactly the way they want us to vote, then they're going to go censor us. And then they claim they're going to take away the R, which they can't.
Okay, so it's been rescheduled for next week. Are you going to go?
No, absolutely not. The reason being is because I don't think that they have the authority to be able to do what they're doing, and by going and attending, it leads credibility to their process, which I think does not exist.
We got the same response from Representative Wendy Horman and Senator Kevin Cook. They both told us they're not going to show up. Senator Cook told us today his biggest concern was that this hearing is supposed to be a closed-door meeting, a sort of double secret probation kind of thing, and he wanted it to be an open meeting. We did reach out to Doyle Beck, the Legislative District 32 chair, and we've yet to hear back from him. We did hear back, though, from the Bonneville County Republican Central Committee, and we were told, well, we told them we were doing this story today, but we were told by them, well, that Chair Nick Contos has a full-time job, but he'll be back in touch soon, and that we should, quote, probably wait for accurate information, end quote, before putting it on TV. So I will share with you what I shared with them. The invitation is still open for tomorrow to get their take on this special investigation committee hearing and to let us know which information you just heard is inaccurate. And now, the other side of the story. The thought of shooting wolves from the air had several of our viewers calling us one-sided. So today, the Idaho Cattle Association gives us their side and explains why it's a good thing. And we want to continue hearing your thoughts on this or pretty much anything on the 208. Text us, 208-321-5614. Don't forget your name and the hashtag the 208. Keep them clean, keep them concise, and keep them clever. We'll give you a better chance of getting yours shared at the end of the show.
Their agenda is to protect their livestock. But if your agenda is just to kill wolves, you don't want these methods to work.
We're not advocating for or seeing a need to go into the areas where wolves are just have natural prey, and we don't have a problem with those wolves. We only have a problem with those that are depredating on livestock and causing issues with functioning cattle ranches.
Yesterday, we talked about the concerns of conservationists who say Idaho's taking the wolf population control and that measure, taking it too far, especially when it comes to aerial hunting. That'd be hunting, shooting a wild wolf out of a helicopter. It's a practice managed and controlled by the state. And this group of wolf advocates, they want it to stop immediately. But there's another side of this coin, obviously, which several of you pointed out to us after the story ended yesterday. JR, Randy, and Sean saying, what about the proponents of popping wolves from the whirly bird? Randy asked us if it was really that difficult to cover both sides, not necessarily on the same day. Well, Randy, you've touched on something that is kind of what we do, a 208 standard, if you will. If we don't get a chance to hear from one side of a story on one day, we can always do it on another day, hopefully the next day. So you may have questions after yesterday's story, like why are we hunting wolves in the first place, and what problems are we trying to solve? Well, if you ask a rancher, and Andrew Bartline did, it's to protect his business and livelihood.
Running a ranch is seemingly synonymous with our statehood,
You know, steak and potatoes, they go together.
but seemingly more difficult with a newer nuisance. Cameron Mulroney knows firsthand.
Yeah.
He works for the Idaho Cattle Association.
You know, it's something that we continue to battle. We know it will be an ongoing battle. They're part of Idaho. They're here.
Here, only after the federal government relocated a protected wolf population in 1995.
And we expect them to be here for generations to come.
And by 2015, the right to regulate that growing population was returned back to the state.
It is something that we need to work to control.
Because the growth of Idaho wolves has a direct impact on Idaho's ranchers and producers.
Mature cows and bulls, wolves are about the only animal that we have in the state that is taking them down.
The Idaho Wolf Depredation Control Board tracks cattle killings attributed to wolves and further manages population control.
We're not advocating for or seeing a need to go into the areas where wolves are just have natural prey, and we don't have a problem with those wolves. We only have a problem with those that are depredating, you know, on livestock. Wolves are very intelligent. They are an apex predator. They teach their young, right? So they're doing this process not just for food, but for training, and that's different than other predators.
Wolves can kill for sport.
Yes, just for the fun of it.
But killing sometimes isn't even the problem. Cows constantly stressed by wolves or other predators have lower birth rates.
That's also what keeps the wheels on the bus going in the cattle industry, is that next calf crop.
To protect the interest of the cattle industry, the control board opened a new practice this year. Now, approved ranchers can work directly with trappers and hunters to kill wolves in their approved regions.
The difference is the contract now is to make sure that that's focused on areas of high depredation, where we're seeing conflict between cattle operations and wolves.
Conservationists oppose this in a petition signed and released this week. It mainly concerns an accepted application benefiting a Nevada-based hunter, Trevor Walsh. He has 4 previous trapping violations in 5 years. The conservationists also point to these maps, showing a high number of hunted wolves in blue that is not near the areas of documented killed cattle in yellow.
I think their concerns are a little over-exaggerated in the fact that we've had these methods available to utilize, and we haven't seen a huge increase in the take of wolves across the state.
A state the Cattle Association depends on.
A lot of factors that come into, you know, a successful cattle operation.
And from what they can measure, wolves are the antithesis to the equation.
A hungry animal or a hungry man only has one problem, and that's to find more food. So if we don't control that population at some point, they're going to have to expand down to areas where we wouldn't normally typically see, you know, that species.
Yesterday, we heard from the Wood River Wolf Project. They manage about 20,000 sheep in Blaine County, and without killing wolves, they say they only lose about 5 sheep a year. Now, they do it by leaning heavily into a wolf's natural instincts, using cattle dogs, lighting, sound. And the Cattle Association, Brian, agrees this can work. There are some non-lethal measures you can take, but on a large-scale cattle operation where the cattle aren't exactly herded together, you'd have to employ another person to keep them in one spot. They say it just doesn't translate as well to cattle because they are naturally different than sheep.
Yeah.
There have also been 1,300 cattle that have been killed attributed to wolves in the state from 2013 to May of this year. So it's a pretty large number.
This has been an issue for years, if not decades, here in Idaho with the wolves.
Yep.
But the reason it's getting attention now is because of that contract for that guy in Nevada?
That guy really tipped off the conservationists, and so they signed a petition where they're saying, first off, we want the aerial shooting to stop. They have a specific issue with that, and he seemed to bring attention to it. So we'll see if anything changes. They're looking at pursuing legal measures.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrew.
Our dry and cold pattern will be coming to an end. It's still going to be cold, but a lot less dry as we go into tomorrow. We're talking about the first widespread snow of the season. That does not mean widespread high totals, but we could see snow in many places across southern Idaho. And it will be a multi-day event where we see lots of wintry precipitation. In valley locations, that's going to vary a bit. And so we'll start out as snow tomorrow night and into the overnight hours of Friday. Again, not talking about a lot of snow, but enough to really impact your drive. And then as we go later into the weekend, we could see a little bit more of that turn into rain. Now for mountains, we're talking about snow above 4,000 feet, pretty much the entirety of the time period. It's looking at least through Saturday. So we're talking about multiple feet of snow at those higher elevations. We do have a winter weather advisory that's now in place because of the first round of precipitation that we are expecting, but you can see that that may lead to a little bit of tricky conditions as far as driving goes, but we have a very busy week ahead for us in the world of weather.
A few more things going on around the 208. Still talking about protecting wildlife. We also sprinkle a little holiday cheer as well. Here's Morgan Romero with the 411.
Some popular trails are closing for the season this Friday. Ridge to Rivers is closing the Landslide Loop Trail, 8th Street Extension Road, and Hawkins Range Reserve. Trails are temporarily closing to protect the land and support the wildlife habitat. They'll open back up in the spring. You can check out the Ridge to Rivers interactive map for the most up-to-date closures. Find a link for the map on our website, ktvb.com. Speaking of protecting wildlife, today the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service said the wolverine is now a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. Scientists said climate change is pushing them toward extinction. Wolverines live in remote areas of Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, and Washington state. The wolverine and their habitat will now be protected.
We're almost up to 1,800 children that are in need of a new toy for this holiday season.
And you can help make those kids' holiday dreams come true during the 25th annual Stuff the Bus Toy Drive this Saturday. It's happening from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Fred Meyer stores across the Treasure Valley. The goal? To fill Valley Regional Transit buses with new, unwrapped toys or gift cards for kids of all ages. Those toys and gifts will then be distributed by the Salvation Army to families in need throughout the community. More holiday fun. Tomorrow night, the Capitol Christmas tree is getting lit. The event starts at 5:30, and then at 6:45, Governor Brad Little and First Lady Teresa Little will be on hand to help light the tree. Plus, Santa and one of his elves will be there as well. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Morgan Romero.
All right, a lot of comments today on the two big topics we talked about today. Let's get to those right now. Like Bernard in Haley says, I'm a strong conservationist hunter. Killing wolves from the air is not copacetic. And many pointed out that, didn't these ranchers kind of move into the wolf territory when they started sending their cattle out to graze in these wild countries? Cattleman has it backwards. Wolves do not kill for sport, but humans do, says Julie. But how sportsman is it to shoot from a helicopter? Not real sportsman-like, I don't know, according to the conservationists. While we support the harvest of wolves for population control, helicopters does displace big game species. That's according to Scott, who's a Region 3 director for Idaho State bow hunters. So he wants all three to get together and kind of figure this out. A lot of conversation left to have. Very disturbing to me, the Republican Party or elected officials are considering anything the Idaho Freedom Foundation puts forward. They don't have any right or authority to influence Idaho legislators. We'll see you tomorrow.